ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It is with great honor and excitement that I introduce Fox-Webbed Cargo, an exhibition that celebrates contemporary art from the Faroe Islands and is part of Fox-Webbed Islands, Faroe Islands Culture Days. The exhibition and the Culture Days bring Faroese art, music, literature, film, and design to an American audience at this wonderful venue at Scandinavia House. I trust that it will be a fruitful and exciting exchange. Cultural exchange has always been vital to the people living in the Faroe Islands, not least to the artist communities. The first Faroese artists of the 19th century were self-taught and several sized opportunities to venture abroad. They also owned their skills by seeking advice from artists coming from abroad to the islands. For instance, from Elizabeth Taylor, an American who lived in the Faroe Islands for nearly a decade and who had studied visual arts in Paris. Her influence on the first generation of Faroese visual artists is undisputed. In the first half of the 20th century, a new generation of artists went to Denmark to study at the Copenhagen Academy of Arts. Among them was Mrs. Ruth Smith, who was born in 1913 in the village of Vágur in Suðuroy. Half a century later, I was born in the same village and I still live there together with around 1,400 inhabitants. So it's very different from New York. Ruth Smith was an artist with skills on a high international level, and she is also a strong proof that art can thrive and be created even in small communities. In our village, we have a gallery that showcases Ruth Smith's art to the joy of the locals and to the many visitors stopping by to experience the important artistic heritage of this extraordinary and talented artist. In an international perspective, the Faroese visual art is young, but despite of that, or maybe because of that, we have seen that female artists have played a central role from the beginning, paving the way for female artists in the next generations. The Faroe Islands have long been a source of inspiration for artists of all kinds. The ever-changing weather, including the fog that sweeps our islands, and the shifting scenery have had a great impact on Faroese art in general and on visual art in specific. Today you have the possibility to experience an exquisite a part of the artistic expression born from these remote yet cosmopolitan islands. We have brought some of our best artists here to you so you can experience how contemporary art looks like in the Faroe Islands with artists that work and create also on a high international level. In a world that often feels increasingly interconnected, yet paradoxically distant, Fox-Webbed Cargo offers a poignant reminder of the enduring power of art to build bridges between people and communities. The world needs that more now than ever. I think that the cultural exchange that formed our art history is an eminent and important factor for artistic and cultural development. This exhibition is a great example. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the curator, Kinna Poulsen, and to all the brilliant artists, some of whom are here today, for creating this exceptional exhibition of contemporary art. I'm sure people will love it and enjoy it. I do. The exhibition was organized in collaboration with the American Scandinavian Foundation and Scandinavian House, and I want to extend my gratitude to them and to all the partners and sponsors whose support has helped Fox-Webbed Cargo make its journey across the Atlantic from Tórshavn to New York City. I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. May this exhibition inspire you to visit our Fox-Webbed Islands someday. I'm sure you will love it, and the people, and the art. With these words, I hereby declare the exhibition Fox-Swept Cargo, Art from the Faroe Islands, open. Thank you.
Welcome everybody to today's panel, to the opening for Fox-Swept Cargo. I'm so thrilled that you could all be here with us, and I'm so thrilled to be on stage with all of these wonderful people who I feel like I've gotten to know really well in the past little while. So I'm just going to introduce briefly Kinna Poulsen, who you saw in the video just now, and then we are going to introduce everybody on the panel who's here with us today. And then maybe, Kinna, you can say a few words about the artists who aren't, unfortunately, not here with us in New York. So Kinna has been curating Faroese art for a long time. You've done over 70 exhibitions. Kinna also works as a teacher, an art teacher, critic, writer. You do everything, and has a very, very popular blog website where she talks about Faroese art and culture, and has also written very extensively about many of the artists, including the artists here today. So we are very lucky to have her here and to have her vision for this exhibition in New York. So yeah, I think I'll just maybe hand it over to you, and then we'll go through everybody else.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, and thank you so much for your really nice way of getting my ideas, I think, because it's, if you get a task like this, present art from the Faroe Islands in New York, it is, we are like 55,000 people, and it doesn't sound a lot, but we got a lot of really great artists in the Faroe Islands. So it's not easy to because you have to pick one sort of line, because so I've chosen 7 artists that are very different, and I think you'll see when you're in the exhibition that there are different styles, and there are different like ages. There are 40 years between the oldest and youngest artist. And this is all intentional, because I didn't want you to like just experience one generation, but the idea, I think, was I thought folk is a little bit maybe not so popular, and I see you got a lot of folk here in New York, And we got that in the Faroe Islands, obviously. But and then I thought the typical thing would be that to romanticize things a bit, because we are this cute little country, cute little islands, like in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's very easy to make it a little just about small houses and romanticize it, and I didn't want to do that, so I thought I'll take folk and maybe also steel, like these cargo ships, container ships that we see all the time in the horizon. When I look out through my window where I live in Tórshavn, I see the ocean. You can see the ocean from almost everywhere in the Faroe Islands, and when I see the ocean, it's beautiful, and I also see the island Nólsoy outside of Tórshavn, but I also see these container ships with these big containers in different colors. So that is the reason why the exhibition starts with a lithography by Curator Poulsen, who is a poet and a visual artist. And then it's like different threads that are about abstract, colorist painting, and different other types of art. But I think I would like to maybe move on to the other artists here, because we have here right by my side is Alda, who has made some I just present them and then this is Alda, Hansina, Randi, Jóhan Martin. And I think I'll just start with you. Maybe you could say a bit about your work in the exhibition.
The exhibition. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yes, I have two works with me to New York. I have the big woven installation, yes, in the back, more foggy, dark room. And this one is, for me, it's a dam. It's a dam woven out of different materials, for example, Faroese wool and nylon thread, fishing line, and wire, which is what makes the form of the installation. And it has stones as weights, and the stones are here from Manhattan. And every time it has been shown, it has had stones from that location. So yeah, and I would say it's something that goes a lot through my practice. Is this? I don't know. I came from a background of photography, so it's a way of like trying to capture a situation or a feeling or a memory that maybe has, a kind of a frame of time that is short, and how to keep that for a longer time of period, if that makes sense. And as you can see, the dam is very fragile, and I think that was a way of trying to recreate a feeling of what I just said, if that makes sense. And now it has been bought by the gallery on the Faroe Islands, so now it will maybe live longer than me actually in their archives. And then I also have the bronze castings, which are 3 objects, 1 hat, this is by my mother, 2 a pair of socks, and a ball of wool. And I think for me they have, of course, a personal value, but they also, carry knowledge and histories that are before me. And I wanted to, in some way, change the value into, the value system of the art world, and cast them in bronze, which is this, expensive, heavy material. And the wool is this fragile, foggy material. And as we spoke about, the socks are also this picture of the first export cargo from the Faroes, the wool, the fish, and maybe the reason to the globalization and maybe the fear that are in the other works, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am painter, and I've been painting mostly for the last 30 years. And I came to New York as a student in '92, and I saw the paintings of the New York school painters, the abstract expressionists, and they just blow me away from everything and blew me away. And I am in that world still, and I'm working out from that, and the abstract painting and putting on layers and colors. And I have often thought that, the painting was not very well, it was not like the thing to do as a young artist in the academies in Iceland and Helsinki, where I studied, but still I just couldn't find another material that interested me as much as the painting, and the painting with oil, and the abstract world of painting. So you can see my paintings upstairs. I have 2 of this size, like a middle size maybe, and 1 large painting. And it was also the first time then when I came to New York that I saw this really huge and large-scale painting that really are wonderful because it's so physical also, and I like the physics of the paintings as well, the movements, the gestures, and yeah. Well,
Thank you. And Randi?
Hello. My name is Randi, and in my practice, I work with sculpture foremost, and I do it with textile. Not normally, but I have done a lot of work where I have knitted and crocheted. It's a very slow process, large textile sculptures. The works that you will experience here, they are made out of, you could call ready-made cloth, because I'm such a, it feels like I'm not cheating, but when I use ready-made textile, it feels like a ready-made for me, if you could say so. So for this, I've used viscose spandex materials, and also hemp, is it called that? Yeah, rope. And I've made these drop-dead gorgeous balls that you will experience, which actually are balls, just so you know, it's quite all right to feel like, oh my God, are these balls? Yes, they are. And it's intentional. And also the thing about textile, using that as a practice or as a medium, it's kind of comfortable. We all see through our skin with the textile as something very comfortable and embracing, or it's not as Bronx, which is hard and more rejective. So that's also why I find it very intriguing, and I'm so curious using textile as an art medium, because it takes a while perhaps to see what's also going on. We relate to it on our body, embody it like that. We get into it in a different way than perhaps other mediums within the arts. And that's also something that I continuously find interesting. So that's why I use textile as my medium in my artistic practice.
Yes, Jóhan Martin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. So my name is Jóhan Martin. I work primarily with sculpture, installations, but also a bit of printmaking and video work and so on. However, I made this sculpture here for the Scandinavia House exhibition space for a very specific context in Tórshavn. This, as Kinna explained it in the video. However, there's also a New York reference in that work. That small Coke bottle there with the rose in it is a small nod to a Manhattan poet called Frank O'Hara. He wrote a poem in the 60s called, his series of lunch poems, he called them. He was a curator in town also. But this specific poem referring to is called Having a Coke with You. It's a poem written to his lover. And then of course there's the rose in it, which is one of the most used symbols in the world, I guess, of like the biggest cliches, a rose is a rose is a rose, I guess. But so for me, what I am interested in is to see how materials relate to each other, this hard, the fragile, and how like I spend a lot of time collecting materials in the city, also taking pictures of fragments of architecture and so on. But seeing them handling materials for a while and then slowly see how they transform into another context, and that context can be both like physically and body, emotionally, and so on. But yeah, so this time this piece has this title from a pop tune called the band is called. Oh, please help me here.
No doubt.
No doubt, thank you. and the song is called "Don't Tell Me Because It Hurts," like the word is called "Don't Tell Me Because It Hurts," and in there you sort of indicate a personal relation or something to someone, or maybe the material. The other works in the exhibition are these plaster reliefs that are cast of cardboard pieces that I find on streets and trashes and construction sites and so on. The one here made specific for this exhibition, the blue ones you will see it upstairs. So they carry these traces with them from the site that I found on, and that is being transferred onto the plaster that you see. I think I'll leave it to that.
Kinna, do we want to talk and introduce the other artists that aren't here with us today? We can go through the slides, I think.
There is Randi Samsonsen, who is also a painter, abstract painter, and she has 3 paintings at the exhibition, and they are all they have a very special surface, like glittery surface. She has been working for many years with painting, experimenting with painting, and she wants to like make a material, try to get it immaterial, like so. You can, I think, when people stand in front of her paintings, they always seem to do a little dancing because they're moving back and forth, and it's because it changes both color and look. So they are interesting in many different ways, I think, and they are very difficult to make photos of. So you have to kind of see them in the exhibition, really, and they are also what Hansina and Randi are in Faroese art history. They are like pioneers of the abstract paintings. It was we don't see it as, or I at least, I don't see it as we are late or in if we compare to New York, which is of course the place to be when it's about contemporary art, right? But when you're born in Tórshavn, and then you're like that is in the middle of the world, right? Tórshavn, that is the most important place, and there is another art history, or maybe several art histories, and in this there is Hansina and Randi are like the first ones to really work with abstract painting, and the curator, who I talked a little about before, he made these lithographies that seem maybe a little bit naive. The first lithography you see is a picture of a container ship with a whole lot of containers that kind of make almost, they look like they go all the way up to heaven. And they seem almost childish, and with this bright colors, but they're never very childish. They are almost the opposite. He's often very critical towards maybe the materialism which is in these cargo, these containers. They bring us all sorts of stuff, and the other, he has a series of other lithographies that are all made in Steinprent, and they are this strange form, but if you and they look like bright and happy, but if you look at it for a while, maybe you can see that these forms look like tanks. So there are some, and maybe the pattern that they form is a sort of a flag, and there's some political criticism in Tórshavn Poulsen's work, or at least there can be. And then there is Hanna Bjarstallur. He has also been working like from the 90s. He has both drawings and some wooden reliefs in the exhibition. He has also these images that look a little bit simple and happy, and the colors are bright, and there are flowers and different stuff. But very often, if you look for a while, you can sense a sort of maybe a melancholic sort of. I think there's a melancholy about all these things he makes, and in that video I called them a sort of a memento mori, because there are so many things, and in one of the images there is this like a skull, yes, a skull, yeah. And you know this wine that is a glass of wine that is almost finished, and so Hanna Bjarstallur is one of our most interesting artists, and I think he comes from Klaksvík and has lived in Helsinki for many years. But one of his images, I put it beside the window because I thought it was nice that in his image the window is, you can see Klaksvík, Klakkur, the mountain in Klaksvík, you can see it there. And it was beside this nice view to New York. We are not in Klaksvík anymore, kind of, yeah. Did I forget someone else?
No, but one of the emphasis in the exhibition also is Steinprent, which we do have a slide for, but this lithography atelier in Tórshavn, which is really a center for contemporary art and experimentation and community. And a lot of the artists here have worked very directly and intimately with the folks at Steinprent. Did you want to say anything about them, or?
It's just that it's such an important place, because obviously artists are working alone. It's like a praxis where you're alone in your studio or something. And in the Faroe Islands, we have these, in this century, like the last 20 years, they've been there, Steinprent, and it has become like a center that people, artists, but also people that are interested in art, they can meet there and talk about art, and it has been really amazing place. In the Faroe Islands, it's very normal to buy art, and this lithographic place, it doesn't cost much to buy like this. You can buy yourself a work, a lithography, and young people and people that are not wealthy at all, they buy art, they collect art, and often if you talk about money and art, and then you can think that the commercialism is a bad thing, but I think in the Faroe Islands it's absolutely not, because I think it's a reason for that there are so many fantastic artists there, and Steinprent is one of the important places. But it's interesting because the artists they are well educated, even though we don't have an academy in the Faroe Islands. So the globalism you talked about is already there, because they studied different places. Hansina has been in Iceland and Finland, and Jóhan Martin in Sweden, and Randi in Denmark, and you are at the moment in Copenhagen, the Royal Academy, right? So.
Yeah, and I just also want to point out, going back to Steinprent, that we do have some lithographs featuring some of you for sale in the shop here too. So if you're interested in taking a look at those, we have some, which is great. But yeah, I did want to address some of the points that you just brought up, Kinna, about the fact that there is no art academy in the Faroes, and yet what I found so striking and incredible is just the fact that everybody goes abroad, but they go to different places, and it's not just one tunnel of, one vision of art making or experiences. It's really international. It goes beyond the Nordic region also, and we have Ranva, who's, for example, based in London now. There's this relationship between the hyper-local, the small intimacy of the Faroes, and Tórshavn is what, like 11,000 people, that's the capital, or 11? A little bit more, 14. Okay, so, 14. So you have this intimacy and this really strong emphasis on community, and it's also very regional within the 18 islands. But then you have this incredible global connection, both with the sea and trade, and then also just education. And also, as you pointed out, that the history of art in the Faroes is, you mentioned that it's only 100 years old, so it's very young. And it went from a very sort of traditional exploration of landscape painting. Obviously, there's a huge history in textiles and knitting, but now it's really branched into a whole variety of media and also experiences. So I don't know if you want to touch on any of that, the sort of growth. You're just experiencing a lot of growth now with changes and the reach of artists going abroad and then coming back and bringing those experiences back. Do you find that that's in a sort of a unique place to be? Do you think that's interesting? Just Kinna, because you are so enmeshed in it. Is it also opposed to perhaps Copenhagen or Helsinki or some of these other Nordic capitals?
Well, I think we have a special situation in the Faroe Islands because many of, not only the artists, but the young people are going abroad to educate themselves. So we have in fact a bit of a problem with young people, that we are in different ways trying to get them back, or we try to hold them in the Faroe Islands as long as we can. And the last years there have been really interesting things happening about education in the Faroe Islands, also in the artistic field. So we got some at the university. We got some how do you say? Music and literature. But you were talking about this different. I mean, this word globalization. It's when you live in the Faroe Islands, which is geographically isolated, then I think it happened after the internet, really, this connection to all the world, and it was like after the internet came, the styles became very variated. Before that, and maybe also the elderly artists they have a very sort of modernist. Many of them are painters, and they are working in this a bit European modernist tradition, I think. But these last 20 years, it has kind of exploded into all kinds of and I hope the exhibition somehow reflects a bit of that.
Take the discussion back to the artists here who we're so lucky to have them here in New York. But one of the things that struck me when we were installing the show especially was, and this was something that you talked about with Ranva's work, and you can't really experience it obviously through these slides, which are not great, so I encourage you to go into the gallery to see the work. But the materiality of everybody's work in the show, it's very a sensitive application of materials and interpretation. And also, to me, this relates as well to the thematic concerns in the show about fog and the weather and the sort of way in which time is represented in all the work. And there's this kind of sense that every time I go into the gallery and I see the work, depending on the light in the space and the time of day, they really do take on different kinds of identities and interpretation. And I really think, to me, it was striking just because there is a sensitivity to light and also the way in which materials respond to place and environment. It's kind of hard to even emphasize how important and how the relationship between weather and and living in the Faroes. I mean, it's really something that it sort of dictates how if you can land your plane in the Faroes, or if you can get out, if you can travel, if you can drive. It's quite dramatic. So I do think that you achieve that sense of the sort of experiential sense of being there and the relationship to these sort of fundamental environments that we find ourselves in. So one of the other things that is really interesting, and to go back to Kinna Poulsen's work, is there is a really strong connection with, as you say, printing and literature and poetry. The Faroese language, which of course is only spoken by, I think, 80,000 people worldwide. And it's very much part of the community in the Faroes. But to me, there was also this really, really powerful connection with visual art making and then also with poetry. And I think, Alda, you also have a poem to describe your installation. I don't know if you want to touch on any of that connection.
Yes, maybe I can circle back to what you were just talking about. That I think my poem or my titles are always written in Faroese, and here you have an English translation. But I hope that you can feel that there is some some kind of contemporary in it. I think, like, as young artists, or I think like the reason, or like the past, years, it has been easier to travel back and forth and live outside of the islands. So what we maybe had before was artists who worked from abroad, who worked and looked back at their home and like wrote and created from that. But now, me, for example, I can travel back and be a part of that community and write in a how do you say, like a nutri, like a present, in the present, if that makes sense, and response to my colleagues and to what is happening there, and criticize and be a part of the conversation in the art community and in the Faroes at whole, if that makes sense.
Just to add on what Alda is saying right now, I think it's a very, very crucial point also for someone like me, being very much, I'm based in Copenhagen due to many reasons, like personal reasons, but I spend a lot of time on the Faroe Islands, and this being able to come back. And so maybe I'm not criticizing Faroes art history now, but I'm just saying this, or like having one of the most famous painters, Mykines. He painted very much his dream visions of what the Faroe Islands was. Like there was when I look at this painting, I don't know him. He died 10 years before I was born even. So I don't know if this is correct what I'm saying, but how I experienced that work when seeing it is that it was very much, he was also based in Copenhagen, very much, traveled to the Faroe Islands every now and then, but it was very much the idea of the Faroe Islands. So there's a distance. And I think that sort of has changed a bit, if that makes any sense. Just to also grab a bit on the language thing, there is that coming from the Faroe Islands, speaking this language that is very, little, it's in this danger zone of like, you always have this urgency to learn other languages also, and to be part of the world in that sense. And I think that is turning that into a strength instead of like a weakness. That's I think many of us that are here now have managed that somehow to balance this in betweenness of languages and places and so on. And that's, to me, I mean, we're here right now. Yeah, that was just a comment on what you mentioned. This.
No, it's a good
Yeah.
Thank you. Randi, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the your work, which is we have you and Alda have textile pieces, but what is your connection as you went to design school as well, and you're bridging these different areas with design and art and textile in a way, and also there's a lot of humor in your work. But do you think about your work as having a connection to some of the histories in the Faroes with textiles, with knitting? What's your relationship to that, if any?
Textile as an art form in the short textile art history in the Faroe Islands is not very well represented. But we have, among others, a woman called Tika Witte. She was a weaver. She was from Finland originally, married a Faroese man. And she was actually, when I was a very young woman, she was my teacher, one of the first weaving teachers that I had. And she was, she could see something that I hadn't gotten encouraged about before. And she was like, okay, your take on the thread, your way to deal with colors and so forth, you have to do more with that. You don't have to think as if it only has value if it is for use. You know what I mean? Because my introduction to my craft, any craft like crochet, weaving, knitting, I'm kind of a textile nerd, love it all. Was of course that, let me just say like this, when I was a young girl, 4 or 5 years old, I had a grandmother who really wanted to teach me how to knit, because it was so important. If I wanted to become a good wife, that I needed to know how to make garments for my family. And I found out quite early on that was not enough. I was really more interested in seeing like, but what if it's not usable? What if it's usable in a different way? What if it echoes something else? But then I walked alone with all these thoughts, and until I met Tita when I was late teen, or I was 19, 20 years old. Which today, fortunately, I encourage students. I also work within textile tools and design. I encourage them to do something that is non-usable, or because or discuss where's the value. So when I use my artistic practice is also, of course, engaging in how I wanna my design background as well as my textile art background. It engages a lot in value, or what are resources, what are we human beings doing to the way we move or change the context of, for example, steel, or in my case textile, or pigments, or there are a lot of ways of expressing oneself. So I use it as a language now, and yes, I do know how to knit a sweater, but I don't engage in it so much. So I have other people to do it for me. Just kidding. Sorry. Yeah. So I don't know if it came close to some resume.
No, it's great. Because it is interesting to hear you talk about the history, the relationship you have with textiles, and just how you weren't even being encouraged to work in that way until you met, is it Tina? Yeah, Tina.
Tita.
And I just want to point out that Kinna just reminded me that we have this really wonderful publication called Foxwood Cargo, and it's just a small takeaway, but it's in the gallery, and it has a little essay by Kinna and also a summary of each artist in the show. So feel free to take one when you're up in the gallery and for reference about any of the things we're talking about today. Can someone tell me what time it is? Because I have no idea what time. 2:01, okay. We may just talk for maybe another question or so, and then we thought we could open it up if any of you have questions for the artists. But one thing I wanted to talk about, because painting is present in the show, a lot of painting. And Hansina's paintings to me are, they really do change all the time. For me, when I was in the space yesterday especially, it was striking because we had all this fog in New York. And when I saw Hansina has this large painting called Swell that we stretched on site because we couldn't get it in the elevator. But it really does change with the light, and it also, to me, it reminds me a lot of like James Turner or Turner paintings where you have this light coming from the back, from the canvas, and again, it's going back to these connections with light. And then Ranva's painting, there's such a detachment from her hand, from the gesture. It's very different from yours, what you're talking about with the body movement and how the scale is really important and you're using your whole gestural, application. But as Kinna was saying too, abstract painting in the Faroes is quite a new thing, relatively speaking. I mean, it was much more figurative, and there's still those elements in the community now, but I wanted to ask Hansina, if you, when you're painting, do you think, I know this is very intuitive, you stand in front of a canvas and you don't really have so much of a plan, you're standing there scoping out the scale and the space of the canvas, but do you think also about the landscape from your studio when you're looking out? Does it relate to nature at all in maybe a way that's harking back to some of the other landscape painters, or do you think about that relationship?
Oh yes, I think about that a lot, and I have been. It has nothing to do with the Faroese landscape, my painting, and I was, it's not so. I don't really stress on that anymore. But I did as a young artist when I left the Faroe Islands. I grew up I was a teenager in the 80s in Faroe Islands, and we didn't have television. So I didn't see, I didn't really know how the world looked like outside Faroe Islands. And the television came in the late 80s. And that was the first time I saw music videos, Michael Jackson dancing on this light on the floor, and all the graphic artists, the graffiti, and the t-shirts with all the graffiti, and it was so exciting to see that. And I was just like, I must get out of here. I want to see something else. I really, and I didn't have any art history. I didn't know anything like that. I knew about I was interested in it, and I knew about it from the museum in Faroe Islands and the painters and the sculptors, and I left to Iceland then, and then I found out about it. Started there, and I somehow then I was really like pointing this really like. I am not painting the Faroese landscape or the villages at all. I'm interested in the painting, the canvas, and the paint, the material, and then it goes in from the inside and out, and things like that. And of course, it has developed very much since then. and it is now doesn't bother me if people see the landscape in it and the Faroe Islands, because of course it is also inside me. I'm brought up there, but I am working inside in the studio, and it is very much about maybe another tradition in painting, and I did also get that from Nordic artists that were painting in abstract paint. And yeah, I paint straight from I don't sketch anything before. It's like the process, and it's straight on the canvas, and I build it up from there.
And two things about Hansina that I know is that her studio is fantastic, and it's in the shipyard in Tórshavn,
Yes.
so you really do have a nice view. So maybe that is bleeding into some of the influence there, but also that you do all these layered painting, and that also, to me, relates back to your printmaking, which in Steinprent with the layering with lithography. We do have some of Hansina's prints upstairs in the shop, but do you see that connection too to printmaking and the layering of, does that influence what you've been working on now?
Yeah, yes, it does. At first it was like that. I came to the graphic workshop with Jóhan Andersson and Fruja Brekko, and I didn't, there were these lithographic stones, and I started out like doing them as paintings. And I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't very much practice in that. And that they just went out quite great. I mean, Jóhan Andersson had been a printmaker for years, and he was very, very excited about the lavering, what is that? How the paint came out on the stones, and I just used a lot of water and the paint, and then I have been there working at the workshop like maybe once a year, and sometimes maybe 2-3 years went by, but it's all ongoing. And nowadays I think that painting and lithography is they're quite connected, and sometimes I get inspired by my lithographic works, and they inspire my paintings, and the other way around. So yeah, they are, and Jan has also said now that, oh my God, now there are maybe 11 layers of lithographic color on this sheet. I don't know if it can handle that, but it does. It always does. So we are experimenting. Yes.
And my final point is just that Hansina and Jóhan Martin also collaborate on curating and putting shows together, and it's kind of amazing, the combination of work and ideas coming together. So I think we have a few minutes. If anyone has questions, they can just raise their hand, and then I think we'll try to repeat them up on stage so everyone can hear them, because I don't think we have a mic to pass around. Yes.
So this is for the artist who was inspired by abstract expressionism. So since you've been painting in that style and coming to New York, can you tell us more about what you love about New York and how that might have inspired your art now that you're painting in a more American style?
Oh, I really, this is the first time I came back ever since then. I love to be back, and it is so wonderful to see this. What inspires me is a lot is in fact art, to look at exhibitions, and I have now been so fortunate that I can travel from Faroe Islands quite often. And now I have these late years, I have been a lot to Europe, and this is the first time then in New York that I'm back, and it's so wonderful to see this this entrepreneurship of people doing all these buildings and spaces and everything that's going on. It's fantastic, and then you get into one, maybe a building that looks really not well. In Faroe Islands, we want things to look nice and tidy or something that looks quite. But then you come inside, and it just opens up a very, very large and beautiful space, and these really huge artworks, and a lot of them, and it's very inspiring. It's really, and this large scale painting has really stuck to me. Yeah, and the idea of all these artists that had these communities, although in this big city, and were working or were exhibiting together or had discussions about art, and had these large studios in these huge tall buildings somewhere in lofts. And I mean, I read about Rothko, that he was in this really dark space, and he didn't want the windows to be cleaned because it was so nice that they were dirty, and so the light wasn't so sharp getting through, and all these things, they are inspiring to hear about. I don't know if I answered your question.
Several questions now. Emily.
The gentleman with the glasses.
You talked about how it almost seems like there was this moment of cultural acceleration. You know, we mentioned the internet and seeing what's happening outside, and the ability to not only go away but come back. And so it seems like just a moment of great expansion in the last few decades. But now that we're at this point, I'm wondering what networks or places in the Faroe Islands support like the coming together of the artistic community, you know, to kind of compound or be inspired from each other, not just from outside. Are there you know, beginnings of art education or academies? Are there cultural spaces? You mentioned the lithography studio, but are there others that you might point to as a convening point for the community on the Faroes?
Shall I start? And we are all. We have been talking about that recently. That there is now that we can get inspired by each other's and other Faroese artists, and we are trying to build up a community. Also in Tórshavn, the capital, where we would like to have a building where artists can rent spaces and be together, so that we can find each other's and reach out and make projects together.
Yeah, create a community. I mean, the piece that's upstairs, the steel structure, is made on site of this old, well, it was a high school when I went there, but earlier on it used to be like a place for tuberculosis patients to come and restitute or die. But so now when the high school moved, we put in an application and did this proposal for creating that more as a cultural center in general for Tórshavn, also for literature and so on. I mean, but we've got some square meters there now. We hope to develop that further, but that's for the future to know. But maybe Alda also, she's 10 years younger than I am, and what, maybe that's a question for you to say, okay, what do you see in the art community now?
Definitely. We are actually 5 people right now studying visual arts, and of course a lot more that are studying music and writing. But I think for me, I collaborate a lot with, you know, when the communities are so small, you start collaborating with, you know, the writers or the musicians, and I feel like also we, for example, last summer made this kind of assembly of, you know, Nordic and Arctic indigenous assembly on the Faroes, because more and more artists are also interested in coming to us, and I think that made a very great community in the Faroes as well, because we started seeing, whoa, I can actually talk with the musicians and create works together and stuff like that. So that is what I have been seeing, and will point at that if you're interested to come, like there's a lot happening, every weekday in Tórshavn actually. The young art scene is very, very vibrant, I would say.
Or like 55,000 in the whole country. So it's super easy to, in that sense, meet at the grocery shop or in a swimming pool, I don't know, wherever. So, but there's like, and you just have to like poke on the shoulder and hey, what do you want to do? So in that sense, perhaps we need the square meters more than we need to connect, because connected, I think we are actually, and people are very good, also non-artistic people, to show up for vernissages and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's a vibrant culture in that sense as well. So that's one of the gains you have from coming from such a small, isolated country. Yeah?
Sure, more questions, yes?
Yeah, I have a question about, like, do you have any international, like, artist investors? Like, do you invite artists to come from other countries?
Maybe I'll reply to
Yeah,
that.
you are.
Well, Hansina and I have been in the board of this umbrella organization that's called Lisa. It's for the Council of Artists, I guess. There's no international residency as we know it, that is facilitated with money and funding and programs and so on. There are a couple of artist houses that you can come in and as Randi mentions, when you're on the Faroe Islands, you very easily get in contact with other artists. So it's more about just taking a first step yourself, and then a couple of door opens.
But we need that.
So I think we need that, and that was also the idea at the beginning of that space I spoke about earlier on. But it's
It's on the progression for all.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was another question. You had your finger in the
Oh,
air.
yes. My question was more personal for you guys. Like here in the United States, we have the idea that if you're an artist, you're like a starving artist, And so when you guys decided to become artists, how did your families respond to that? And how did you guys support yourselves too? Like how did that work?
I don't know. This is like a footnote. Actually, I got a studio when I was 13. I got my first studio in the same area as that Hansina is working in now. And that was just because my father was working as a harbor master, right? Just what I wanted to say early on also is that we have a very generous support system on the Faroe Islands. It can always be developed. But like the Faroes are a cultural foundation. It supports artists, and we also, of course, have access to Nordic fundings and so on, which support artists in their work and endeavors and projects and so on. So that's also, but yeah, the personal, yeah. I didn't grow up as a starving artist, and my parents supported me all the time. So that's just a reply to that.
Yes, parents have been very supportive.
Yeah, I think I am lucky enough, or all young people in Faroes are lucky to get supported to go abroad to study. So that's how I make a living right now. But I'm a little bit terrified to go on the other side afterwards. But yeah.
You had a question?
I think that it's a comment, but also think that there's a reverse learning here, like you said, New York is, but I feel jealous about the comradeship and the closeness and you just have to tap someone's shoulder, like here. And also when you talked about a space, that's something we could learn here, there is to me, there's no unified space where people who love art can meet up people who love art. We meet up, but it's not the same as I wonder if you could comment on that. It's not the same as young people getting together around the artist casually. There's a divide that doesn't seem to exist. I don't know.
Yeah. I was talking about this place Steinprent where people meet, and And I think because in Steinprent there are a lot of artists that also come from, many of them come from Denmark and from other places, and it's actually, they said to me that it was special to come to this place, and because the audience or the guests, the visitors, were so passionate about art. So and they liked it. Several of these artists from abroad. But I think actually that we have got several communities, because we have also got like this Listasavn Føroya, which is the Faroese Art Museum. And they have there is a permanent collection with where you can see Faroese art history from the beginning, and there are also they have also exhibitions of contemporary art, and they have there are really a lot of people. What?
Temporary exhibitions, like
changing. It's one starting on Friday, I think. But I mean. Yeah, a lot of happy people. And we drink wine also.
You like wine, yeah?
Yeah, that's very good.
I just have to say, if you follow Kinna on Instagram, there's this place that they curate exhibitions and there's a lot of wine, and it's wine all the time. And I was like, I really want to go there. It just looks like my kind of place. And apparently it's also a garage that you rented out and turned into a wine bar, and now it's a gallery. So there is this kind of like, very, very nice, intimate, and warm community. We love the Nordic House. We thought it was fantastic too, and there was some really amazing programs going on in all the arts when I had the opportunity to visit. So, do we have to wrap it up?
One more question.
Oh, yes.
Go. No, not for me.
Oh. I don't know. Oh, okay.
Or we wrap it up.
So regarding starving artists, I'm from the United States, but I studied in Denmark, and I know Randi. This is such a cultural shift from what happens in the United States around art, right? So you definitely can be a starving artist in the United States. It's very different in other countries. So I think that gives a lot more freedom for Danes, for Faroese, to go into that world and not have these questions that you mentioned, right? I'm curious what you all think, because you're experiencing and you're aware of this contrast of where artists live to how they can live, right?
I was a starving artist once, but I'm so happy that I'm not anymore, because I'm quite getting a bit old now, or so it's more comfortable now. But it wasn't after the school. Of course, the education in Scandinavia is for free. It's free for everybody, so you can take. Yeah, and that's because we have high taxes, and we pay them with. Gladly, we pay our high taxes because we get so much for this money back. So free school, free hospitals, and all that. But then, as a starving artist, as a youngster, we have a good life in these islands, that we must say. But you have also these standards, and as an artist, you couldn't live up to these standards, like being a young woman and not have the ambition of buying a house and having a husband and having children and all that. But that was like the farthest way from me, because I wanted to be an artist, so I would have to do the things differently than the most people maybe that I knew then. And what my mom was very worried, but she found out that I was strong enough to do this.
I think we have to stop now, right? Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.